Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman, and we're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. Pre-election Thursday, John Riosti. Thursdays with John. John, we thank you so much for your time and your insights, community bank reporter for American Banker. John, you are still in an undisclosed location at a daycare. Oops, I shouldn't say daycare. How many kids you got running around there?
There are 6 tonight. 6 this afternoon, rather.
I love it.
Thank God it sounds like they're asleep.
That's a good.
I hope so.
Very good. And that's your wife's business, correct?
Their business.
Awesome.
I keep as far away from that as I can.
Yeah, and you're a leaser. You lease property. Lance in his warm winter clothes out of Arkansas and Katie out of Washington. Thank you all for joining us. We do have a lot of information, probably not what you want to hear, but there are the certificates. Please ask questions. I got a couple of questions late, and I'm not going to get to them. We'll get to them tomorrow. Let's do the poll questions, and then we'll go to John's report. Number one, how many SBA loans were made in fiscal year 2020? See if we can stump John and Lance. I don't think we're not going to stump Katie. Let's see if we can stump John.
I just read the report, so you're not going to stump me.
You wrote the poll question. Yeah, okay.
Hey, Katie, can you text me the total number of PPP loans right quick?
All over the board. What's the answer, guys? What do you think, John, Lance?
I'm going to say. I'm going to say 7 million, John.
John, what do you say?
I'm going to say 6 million. I know there were over 4 million PPP. Actually, if I can change, I'm going to go down to 5 million because I don't think that there are that many.
Katie, what's the answer?
So Carranza said yesterday in a statement that there are nearly 9 million.
Whoa.
So there.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so there.
I got to check that.
Well, think about it. I assume we're counting. We said 7A. No, we said SBA loans, so we're counting disaster loans in that.
Okay, I didn't.
Oh,
yeah.
That was the idle. The idle. I wasn't planning for the idle stuff.
I was stunned when she said 9 million, and I was, but I didn't.
No, we're not. We don't have to explain the questions. Next question is money. How much money?
Hey, Bob, you set me up. I'm going 950.
John, what do you think?
Well, I'm guessing too because I didn't contemplate disaster.
Yeah, you guys are right. Right, Katie? It's 950, right?
No, it's actually 750.
Oh!
That was a semi-educated guess.
There you go. The bottom line with these, I mean, these are astronomical numbers. They're astronomical for the program. Lance, you and I a year ago, if we talked about these type of numbers, they would have committed us.
Yeah.
So
that's about 25, 30 years worth of SBA lending in 1 year.
Yeah.
And our hope is that the agency can respond to this, and this will solidify them as truly the access to capital for Main Street entrepreneurs by working with these astronomical numbers. John, Lance and I have been around a long time, and how this started was that they wanted to get rid of the agency. The Republicans in the 80s said, we got to get rid of this boondoggle, and that's, you no longer hear of that. The agency is truly bipartisan, and everyone on this who's listening in has definitely done their lobbying and done their homework and say, hey, small business is sort of important to our economy. And you looked at the numbers today. What was it? 33% GDP growth? What do you guys think? How much of that was small business? Small business reopening?
Got to be a significant portion.
Yeah. And finally, what percentage of your small business lending consists of business acquisition loans?
Bob, my answer on that one is around 10%.
What do the stats show, Katie? Whatever, 23% of 7A loans are for business acquisition. Is that correct?
I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I'm pretty sure when we reported about that like a week or two ago, that's about where it was.
Yeah. So
That's
That's,
7 lending though, isn't it not? But when you factor in all the disaster and PPP loans, I would imagine it gets pushed down.
yeah. John, when you're talking to bankers, do you see that as the business acquisition as an important part of their marketing strategy, their marketing product mix?
Yes, when they're talking about just 7A loans, conventional 7A loans last year, and hopefully, more and more into 2021, acquisition is a big part of the 7A strategy, business acquisition, and we're talking about that a little before, and there are some interesting niches, but overall it's a very big component of regular 7A lending.
Katie, why don't you tell us about numbers, and then we're going to have John tell us what's going on in Washington, D.C.
Sure. So this is part of the report that came out yesterday, and it hit a lot of our inboxes this morning, but I got the chance to look through it. And, as we already said, there's a total of about nearly 9 million loans. This is historic record-breaking numbers for SBA, and most that's really going to be coming from the PPP. That program did 52 million loans worth $525 billion. Traditional was only $28 billion of that. But you also have a large portion from the EIDL program, which totaled 3.6 million, valued at 191 billion, as well as you also have those advances on top of that, 5.7 million advances worth $20 billion.
I mean, these numbers are astronomical. So
I could
that's
jump in and mention a comment that was made yesterday on one of the it's Prosperity Bank. It's public record now, so I guess I have no trouble naming it. But Prosperity Bank in Texas and their CEO, they were talking about PPP a little bit, and one of the observations he made was that there's a significant portion of the money they lent out that's still sitting in bank accounts that's unused. And I just wonder at this late date if that is sort of unique to Prosperity and their customer base, or if other bankers and other banks are still seeing anything similar.
That's an interesting observation. I would have gone the other way. Lance, what do you think about that?
I don't think that there are, from a percentage standpoint, not a majority of the loans have they not used the money. I mean, I think most of the PPP loans, they needed that for payroll and expenses. But, to some extent, I'm not surprised at the comment, John, because forgiveness was such a cloudy issue and has been and continues to be, that there are borrowers who probably got their I had one, they got a PPP loan and they were afraid they would not be forgiven, so they just kept it in the bank account so they were ready to pay it off if they felt uncomfortable.
John, what's going on in Washington, D.C.?
Same thing we
Thank
discussed.
you for your report, John. Okay, let's move on. Go ahead.
Right, that's about it. I did see that the sides are holding out hope that they can do something. They said this was a day or two ago before the election. I don't see how that could happen. I would be stunned. What are we, 100 hours or so away from the election, or a little bit more? If they could, with everything going on.
Well, I've been stunned all year, so that one, I just pile it on.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. We read these things. Katie mentioned Senator Mike Lee of Utah made another proposal. Well, let's ask the simple questions. Are they even in session? Or are they just, what's going on with that? Are they home electioneering?
No, they're still in session. I mean, it's only a few days since they had the vote on Amy Coney Barrett, the Supreme Court Justice. But I guess that's a good point. They're probably either about to or have already left to make their final election sprints.
John, we're looking at this laundry list of bullet points. I mean, this is bipartisan, right? Is there anybody who's come out against any of these provisions?
No, no one has come out against them at this point, but it's still very new, and I wonder, given the election, given the controversy that surrounded the Supreme Court, just given everything that's going on, how much attention has been focused on this.
Yeah, Katie, this is a good slide, Katie. What did Senator Lee say anything about the blanket forgiveness and dollar amounts? Are we bumping up to 150? Are we still at 50? Or what's going on with that?
So this is still a more targeted kind of act. It's not going to be focusing on that 150 bump or even reusing the PPP funds. This is really focusing primarily on removing PPP loans from calculation of assets or balance sheets for regulations based on size of the lending institution. That's what a lot of the trade organizations have been pushing for real recently. So this is much more targeted and not focused on any of those other issues, really.
Why is that a big deal, John?
Well, it's a big deal right now because there are a lot of banks, I guess, perhaps some of the smaller banks more so than larger banks that did, for their balance sheets, a lot of PPP loans. Because of the situation surrounding forgiveness and the fact that it's taken much longer than anticipated, those loans are still on the books and they're impacting ratios and capital levels and everything. Balance sheets are much bigger than they would be otherwise. I mean, even small banks probably have millions, tens of millions of assets on the books that they would not have, that they wouldn't have otherwise, and that impacts their capital ratios. And they're barring some type of legislation. There would have to be decisions by the regulators about how they would deal with that.
I don't know the answer to this, and I don't know if anybody does. But the question is, obviously, out of the Great Recession, the federalities were very interested in regulation of non-bank lenders. First, I guess, two questions, and if you don't know the answer, we'll pull it up. What percentage of PPP loans were funded through non-bank lenders, and are the regulators, SEC, whoever has authority over these non-bank lenders, are they getting involved? Anybody have an idea on that one? Lance is shaking his head. I hear crickets in Arkansas.
I will say I don't think it's a large percentage. I think in dollar terms, the program is so enormous, it would probably look impressive. But I can't imagine that it's very much.
Okay.
A lot of the biggest fintechs focused on behind the scenes support of the banks who are making the loans. So
good idea. Yeah, they were really brokers.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the other thing, Bob, is they didn't get involved until round two, most
Right.
of them.
That's right.
And in round two, it was mostly small dollar PPP loans.
Yeah. The reason why I asked the question, I saw something come through that there's regulations in place that will allow a Wall Street bank to fail. I haven't had a chance to get into that, John. I don't know if I know you're more community bank oriented. But that was a corollary. Katie, I know you've had a chance to read this Inspector General report. Anything stand out for you that we need to know about?
So I've only gone through a little portion of it. It's really a long
You haven't read all 71 pages?
Exactly. I think it's over 70 pages there. But going through just the highlights from the first couple of sections there, OIG is saying that they've found that $14.3 billion in EIDLs went to accounts that differed from the original bank account listed on the loan applications. An additional $62.7 billion appears to have gone to applicants who already had received funds or were using the same email addresses and bank accounts and things like that. And another $1.1 billion appears to have gone to potentially ineligible businesses.
Well,
So
remember,
total,
yeah.
that's almost 21% of those EIDL funds that are potentially fraudulent.
Well, but remember, we covered this story about a month ago, this business in Georgia where everyone was knocking on his door. There was some snafu at the lender where they kept on putting the same EIN number, and the guy was obviously legitimate. So there are accounting things. Those numbers surprise you, John?
Yeah, I guess. I think this program, EIDL, when you factor in the confusion or at least the controversy surrounding the advances and everything else, this is, I suspect, where the most instances of fraud and sort of mistakes and just other confusion is going to surface. I think on a proportional basis, it will be here, and it will be less so in PPP.
We're following what's going on with the bounce back program in the UK. They're having bigger problems than we are. We like to just sort of just put things into context. But their lending schemes, I know, Katie, you're putting together an article for that for next week. I love their terminology. What is lending scheme, bounce back program? What's the other terminology they have on that?
I don't know, but yeah, it's a really interesting program. Unfortunately, the thing with in the UK is most of those borrowers have never had a loan before, so a lot of them just don't know how to handle this. It's going to create a huge problem there.
Yeah, Brian makes a great point. He says the same IP email address could be CPAs or like submitting applications on behalf of their clients. That's what we found out. The story in Georgia, maybe we should dust that one off, Katie. Secret Service knocked on his door, and he was anyway. It was a feel good story. He and the Secret Service worked it all out, and the lender worked it all out. Lance, this is from Raman. Can the EIDL be used to pay down principal on an existing business mortgage?
Not supposed to be, but here's the thing, Bob, in a roundabout way. The EIDL loan is supposed to be used for working capital, operational expenses. But it's not supposed to be used for retiring debt. But the long and short of it, you use the working capital. Let's just say you get an EIDL loan and you use the EIDL loan proceeds on payroll, or you use the EIDL loan proceeds on marketing, or whatever it is, and you use the money you would normally use on those to pay your mortgage. Yeah, so it's, but, EIDL loan proceeds should not be used to retire debt. That's, if you read the program guidelines, it's supposed to be for operational expense.
Katie Ann says the OIG report does list the longest on-hold phone call, so that looks interesting. Go ahead and dig that up. Gentlemen and Katie, thank you very much. We appreciate your feedback. John, I can't wait to talk to you next week.
Next week.
It's going to be a fun time.
Still here.
We also have our hospitality webinar next week as well. So thank you all very much. Thank you for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street. One entrepreneur at a time. Thanks a lot.
Have a great afternoon.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.